right, okay. We're having so much fun. Welcome back to the show, and I'm with John Broons, the family business guy. How are you, John?
Good, thanks, Mike.
John, we've been talking a lot about family businesses, and I think one of the challenges comes up. We talked about generation changes.
Yep.
One of the things is people are going, well, I'm second generation, I'm third generation. Where do I fit? Is it the same? Is it different? Do you come across this in your dealings?
Definitely. Working with families, you always come across this generational change.
Yeah.
So you might join the business when you're 16, 15. You might even be making mail up on the kitchen table, but you might feel like you've been in the business forever.
Yeah.
Was that the business that started when you were a little kid, and now you're 30, and now you're in the business and you're in a management position, and the business is very different from when you were, doing the mail outs?
Yeah.
Or are you third generation and the business is larger still, and there are not just 50, 60, 70, 80 employees, there's probably hundreds of employees, and it's a different picture again. So what business are you coming into, and where do I fit is a really important question to ask.
With people with that, do you find the second and third generations, they're coming into like this, I'm just speaking from my own experience, like this informal culture? It doesn't seem any, I just arrived.
Very much so. The culture inside the business generally differs from the culture at home around the table. In some cases, the culture is brought from the family into the business. The newer the business, the younger the family business. And sometimes that familyness can be deemed to be a critical, important part, where the grandfather will be walking around and managed by walking around, talking to the staff, knowing their birthdays, knowing the husbands or wives' names. That kind of culture will flow through, and that's very informal, and until you get the other side of the coin, where everything is process driven and everybody's documented, and we have job specifications, and it can vary. Size of business does not necessarily mean that the formality or informality is guaranteed.
Do you find that in this day and age, particularly now, when you're mentioning then documentation and job descriptions and everything do you find now this second and third generation coming in are bringing this new culture with them, and it's starting to go away? I mean, when I first went to business, my dad did deals on a handshake. Shook your hand, deal done. You'd never do that now. No.
There are still some people where cultures will allow that to happen and expect that to happen. But it's fewer and further between.
Yeah.
The younger generations, litigation, the courts, processes in Western society is such that it makes it more predictable that you will find people that want to watch their back.
Yeah.
And yet there are some times when you will find partnerships, and people will go into partnerships and they'll say, yeah, we agree, let's start the business, but they don't put the documentation of a partnership agreement into place.
Yeah.
And that happens more often than not today.
It does, and I find that, just digressing just slightly, because when these partners come together, it's like, could be two friends or two mates or two girlfriends work at the same place, come up with this idea, they might be doing, one springs to mind, it's a cupcake business that I knew about, but the other one was electrical business that I knew about, and it was, we're the best of buddies.
Yeah.
Let's just do this. Yeah.
I think I mentioned once on a previous presentation we did where two mates went into business as partners, and one fell in love with the other partner's sister and married her. So inadvertently it became a family business because the family relationship was there that never existed when they started the business. And although they had a shareholders agreement, it was never sufficient to handle some of the circumstances that arose because of that.
Because of that. So getting back to the second and third generation cultures that are coming into it, do you find that these are some of the difficulties or challenges of this new generation coming in now, going, well, I'm second, third generation, and they're coming with, the place needs cleaning up. You know, I've been and done the course. They've told me it's got to have this form, this agreement. And do they find resistance? How do you meld these two together?
The melding is very different. So the cultural stuff, this challenge of generational stuff, you really have to talk to the people to find out where they think they fit. And sometimes, I had a conversation with someone this morning who said they believed they were, even though this individual is a son or daughter of the business owners, that individual felt that they were actually third generation by starting to professionalise inside the business, whereas the business was started by a founder and the partner came in after there was a personal injury to the founder to take on the business, so it was a little bit entrepreneurial. And that grew the business, so the second generation actually almost feels like it's third generation. So there's it really is a perception on that individual's part, but they still feel very strongly about how they want to be involved in the business, and they've grown into the business. So it's not a hard and fast rule.
Do you find in those circumstances, John, that sometimes, and we've seen it in other family businesses, they've got boards of management in place, and they're really upskilling. Do you find, though, that there is a pressure put on these individuals to employ family members? So I might be the operations manager, but do you find that?
Sometimes there's pressure from families. There's an expectation that you're going to come straight into the business. And those pressures can be so great that people don't perform to how they would want to perform, not to the level they want to perform, and they're never quite sufficient from the parents' perspective. There are some people, I was having another conversation recently where the older generation was saying to the younger generation, well, you're getting it right, but I'm still not 100% sure that even though you've worked in the business for 25 years, that you've got it. And the 60, 70-year-old person is going, I'm ready. Maybe I'm not sure whether I'm ready to retire and whether I trust you, even though you've been doing it for such a long time. So we do have these generational issues, and different generations will face different pressures and different conversations within each individual's business.
So when you actually went into your family business, John, your training, how did it work for you? Did you find your training path was a good one, and did you learn lessons from that you've actually brought forward into your business now?
I think I was pretty lucky in the training that I had when I came into the family business. I did leave school and come straight into the family business. The staff that were in my family business were ex-public company, ex-public company listed on the stock exchange staff. So when I was able to sit in board meetings pretty much from the start, so I was seen and not heard, very much in the corner. But I was listening to the financial side, I was listening to the strategy side. So I was very privileged to get perspective that would not normally be given a 17, 18-year-old working on the tools out there doing what you have to do to earn a living. So there was some privilege in that. And the quality of that education, if I needed to learn in some of the businesses, it was practical sales, turnover, volumes, those kind of things. I was given an education that was appropriate and incredibly directly related to the business. So I was being very specifically trained for our business. Funnily enough, a lot of that education that I have, I've been able to extrapolate, and with further education outside of the business, over the years, I've seen how valuable that's been, because I have been able to relate it across industries.
One thing you mentioned then about like sitting in boardrooms and these really high quality people there, and you learnt the figures and so forth. You end up buying your family business, but a lot of family businesses, one of the challenges that comes, and you just mentioning a bit about finances, and it just occurred to me, how do you find family businesses actually source their capital? Is there still the trend that they have a feeling that it's our family business or it's family money? How did you do it?
Where do you want me to start with this one? There's one particular business I've had involvement with, and that family business is now probably 25, 30 years old. That family business has never borrowed money. That is one of the driving beliefs of the existing ownership of the business. That may change with newer, younger people involved in the business now, looking at different growth options. So that may change. There are other people that, when they're sourcing capital, do you grow it within the business? Do you borrow from banks? Do you find private equity? Do you change shareholding? There's lots of options, but what is right for you always has to be balanced with what, in my mind, is what's right for the family long term. So there's conversations that will happen in the business, and then we might have conversations that we'll have in the family. Do we think this is right to, maybe buy a couple of racehorses? Maybe that's not the right thing to do as an investment. Or maybe we need to buy this new business that's started up around the corner that would be a great fit. So strategically, long term, it will be logical, but the founders don't quite understand it, or the second generation don't.
You mentioned this on one of the previous shows, you just bring it up then, where they can buy a business that might bolt on, and sometimes the family businesses use that as a training ground for the new generation, buy them a little bolt on and go, here you go, it won't affect us, here it won't hurt us if you mess it up.
Or they'll say, if you've got an idea, you go and start it and we will fund you. So there's lots of ways to train the next generation, and it depends on how open the family is to doing those kinds of things.
Family business, fascinating topic. John Broons, the family business guy. You've seen your fair share of family businesses over the last few years.
Yeah, few years.
Having your own as well. And as you say, when you've seen one family business, you've only ever seen one. But there is that common denominator in a lot of family businesses, and that is the generations taking over. And you're actually discussing in a previous segment when we talked about families can buy little bolt-on businesses and give it to a family member to learn, or that as a family member's got an idea. And there must be multitudes of ways that they bring the next generation into their businesses. Or does someone go, he wants to come in, but we don't have any room?
That can happen. That can happen.
Yeah.
And in those cases, sometimes decisions get made that may not be in the best interest of the business. Yeah. They may be in the best interest of the family, and that may be long term the way to go.
Yeah.
Those decisions that are made, you generally can't go back on them. They are things that if you try and they don't work, you may have lost a good employee and hired a family member who's not up to the job. So we need to do some sort of evaluation prior to different members joining the business. Sometimes there's no evaluation. How do we do that?
Yeah.
What's fair for the employee and what's fair for the family?
When you sit with these family businesses and you're in your consultation and your advisory role with them, John, and they go, look, we've got to bring this person in. Is it your approach that, okay, let's discuss it with all the rest of the family members first? And I think you told me once before, either the job exists or the job doesn't exist. And you're quite business orientated in that way.
I think we need to find out what the priorities are of the family.
Yeah.
They will be the guiding light.
Right.
If the family wants to go through a process of bringing family in at all costs, then there's an opportunity for a family member to step into a role. If that's the case, and if it's at all costs, possibly we need to have some sort of evaluation prior to that family member joining the business, so we can find out skill sets, so we can find out headspace, whether or not that person might fit or might fit in a different role than what we're expecting or hoping. People will need to be evaluated along their career path. So it's something that's a great value to have that exercise go through.
Yeah. We've talked about them joining, but obviously you see the other side of the coin, where family members come to you and go, John, I want out, but what will it do to my family? How will I face them?
Sometimes it's the older generation that say, I've had enough,
right,
and I want the younger ones to step up because I can't go. And we don't think we'll get enough money for the business, or we just want to exit the business, but we don't want to leave our kids standing with no job. Yeah. They're all conversations. I can't give a hard and fast rule.
No.
So it comes back to when the kids come in, that's okay. When the parents are in there, what do they want? But when they're trying to leave, if the parents are trying to leave, they need to be thinking about and planning this a long time before they actually step out. And if it's a younger generation member that says, this isn't for me, they need to feel comfortable that they can get out, that they don't feel that it's something that's a wall on top of them about to fall. Or sometimes it's the one where the next generation doesn't fit, and how the older generation exit them, to do it in a way that works best for the family and for the business.
So for you, from second and third generations, it's different for both of them. I realise the different emotions attached, but when you're in and they say, look, we've got to transition these people into our business or out of our business, do you have some golden rules of how, as an advisor, you help the family through this?
I will work to find out what the family values are. I'll work with the family to work out what their ideas are of how they might see it, what other options. We will go through those other options that might be available, whether it's education that may be required, whether it's a just straight step in and we're going to teach them everything they need to know, the process that they want to go through, and approach it from a process side of things, understanding that we need to handle the emotional side of it very carefully.
Fantastic. For family business owners out there now, or families in business out there who may have a multitude of things going on, because there's so many different dynamics in a family business, and they go, you know what, it would be nice to have a sounding board or an advisor who could bring his experience. What's the best way of them contacting yourself, John?
Email john@johnbroons.com. You can send me an email anytime. I will endeavour to answer that as quickly as I can, generally within 24 hours. And I have a mobile phone, carry it with me, 0433 131 070.
Fantastic. John Broons, the family business guy, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks, mate.